Right now, though, we have these tea parties going on. You'll recall when Rick Santinelli first on the floor of the Chicago Commodities Exchange started screaming on CNBC, we need a tea party, and then it came out that that was actually a setup and that there was a group behind these tea parties. A lot of speculation that Newt Gingrich was involved. Andrew Langer, however, is the president of the Institute for Liberty, instituteforliberty.org, a conservative organization, think tank, and you guys are claiming that you're the ones who are behind the tea parties.
Well, I'm not saying that we're behind it. We are a national sponsor of a website called taxdayteaparty.com, which also really isn't behind it. You know, taxdayteaparty.com is an umbrella sort of site for these things, and it's been an area where local folks can step up. There's a wiki that's involved, and oh, good Lord, back at the beginning of March when these things were starting to get talked about, that's where people began to step up and take ownership of local tea parties.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I mean, I participated in the D.C. Tea Party on February 27th and had a lot of fun there and was planning on taking ownership of the Annapolis Tea Party on April 15. And when I got to the website, I was told to go to the Tax Day Tea Party website by somebody else. And sure enough, a kid named Aaron Jones had stepped in and said, I'm going to organize the Tax Day Tea Party.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happening all around the country. This idea that it is somehow AstroTurf because there are national organizations that are involved with helping to sponsor the umbrella website is a false one. I know that for the D.C. Tea Party that's going on, I have offered to help bring speakers in. I have offered to help with some of the logistical details.
Andrew, you're saying that who came up with the idea in the first place?
Of the tea parties?
Yep.
Well, as clear as I know, it was Rick Santelli. I mean, everybody I talked to talks about Rick Santelli's rant on CNBC. And after that, a bunch of folks said, boy, this would be a great idea, but I don't want to have to wait till the summer.
Here's the thing that baffles me. Andrew, I'm assuming that you know, if you're, as the president of the Institute for Liberty and the guy who's promoting taxdayteaparty.com, that you know that the original Tea Party was a protest against a corporate tax cut. I'm assuming that you know that you've read your history. That you know that the Tea Act of 1773 reduced the tax on tea imported into the United States by the British East India Company from 25% to 0, and that the protesters were protesting the fact that the East India Company was essentially pulling a Walmart, that they were going to put all these small entrepreneurs, all these small business people out of business because they got this massive tax cut from the British government in order to help bail out the British East India Company.
Tom, it's all well and good, and I appreciate that history lesson. But the fact is that, you know, when Santelli was talking about the tea parties, it was a shorthand notation for sort of this fundamental expression of American unhappiness with some form of government policy or another. And that's really what these tea parties are about. It's not, to me, it's
Santinelli was saying essentially that homeowners be screwed, be damned, to hell with the homeowners. We need to be bailing out the banks. Is that what your tea parties are organized around?
No, most of the tea parties that I'm dealing with are focused on the government, on the spending side.
And Santinelli is a guy who makes 6 figures, maybe 7 figures, and he was speaking to a room full of people who make 6 and 7 figures, and they were all applauding and saying, "Yeah, to hell with the homeowners." Yeah, I just don't get it. You know, what is it? You know, unless you're just a shill for the ultra rich in the United States and the Olin Foundation and that, you know, the kind of groups that support.
Well, you know, the Olin Foundation doesn't give out money anymore.
I know they stopped a few years ago, but you know, there are others, you know, Scaife and whatnot. You know, the people who are. I beg your pardon?
No, well, sure, the Scaife still.
Yeah. So here we've got a bunch of foundations that are interested in promulgating the interests of the very wealthy in the United States. You know, you're funded by some of them. Other groups are funded by many of them. These right-wing foundations. Their primary goal seems to be to make sure that taxes on the very wealthy, from estate taxes to the top marginal income tax rates, don't go up. You've got, you know, the majority of the people showing up at these so-called tea parties, I would submit to you, probably are not even paying income tax. They're probably at or below the poverty line, and you've somehow convinced them that taxes are their problem. I think that this is incredibly disingenuous.
Well, as I said, and as I was trying to say, most of the folks that I know who are coming to these Tea Parties are focused on the spending side of it. That this is what they have tapped into, and what Fantelli's ring really tapped into is a visceral.
So what kind of spending are you opposed to? About half of our federal budget is.
Tom, hold on for a second. Let me just finish here. The fact is that you had folks who were upset about Republican spending leading up to the 2006 election and then the 2008 election, and they dumped these guys because they were spending like drunken sailors, this whole deal with bridges to nowhere and the corruption that comes out of government money. And what happens? They elect a new Congress. That Congress comes in and spends $1 billion an hour since taking office. They're upset about the substance of the stimulus package and where that was going. They're upset about the taxpayer monies going to pay AIG bonuses and the fact that nobody read the bill, which led to that. And that's why they're coming out. They wanted change. People wanted change. They wanted something different, and they're getting more of the same. That's why they're coming out. And it's not about Obama. It's not about Nancy Pelosi. It's not even about George W. Bush.
But here's
general dissatisfaction with government.
Here's the thing, Andrew Langer. What is showing up at your Tea Parties are these kinds of things.
You got them in college? Get them the hell out of college. They're brainwashing.
Burn the books!
They're brainwashing kids.
Yes.
Well, even if you do that, if you send them off to college, these professors brainwash these kids.
I don't think you were serious.
I mean, basically, what has happened is that your Tea Party thing has been, if you are genuinely concerned about, and I'm genuinely concerned, for example, about the fact that we're bailing out banks rather than individuals, and I think that there is a populist rage about this, that the Obama administration is following the Bush administration's policies in this regard. If that's what it's all about, why is it that the people who are showing up at your Tea Parties, and why is it that Republican politicians all over the United States are hopping on this? Why is it that the Republican messaging machine is saying, yeah, this is our thing? Why is it that groups like yours, the Institute for Liberty, that are funded by right-wing think tanks,
We are a right-wing tank.
I beg your pardon?
We are a right-wing think tank.
Yeah, I'm sorry, funded by right-wing corporations. Who by and large are supporting the interests of the very wealthy in the United States and the large corporations, are trying to use the Boston Tea Party, which was pushed back against the very wealthy and the large corporations, as some kind of banner. I don't get it.
Let's step back for a second, because I think, I was asked about this. Krugman has his piece in the New York Times today about other sort of fringe elements coming out to these Tea Parties as well. The fact is, anytime you have some sort of mass public demonstration, you're going to have fringe elements showing up. To me, it's no different than the folks who have their anti-war demonstrations having the 9/11 people show up who say that 9/11 was an inside job by the Mossad and the CIA. I certainly don't think that that is within the mainstream of the anti-war movement, and yet those people are going to come out. And so, we can't control every individual group that's going to come out and try to say something about spending.
But you're pushing this right-wing agenda of smaller government, and frankly, I don't think that most Americans, if what you mean is do away with Medicaid, do away with Medicare, do away with Social Security, do you really think that most Americans are with you on that?
I think most Americans want their health care to be cheaper, and I think most Americans recognize that there's something fundamentally broken with our
And you
health
don't think that most Americans realize that if we had a single-payer national health care system, that would give them cheaper health care?
No, I think most Americans realize that any time you apply a government solution to a big problem like that, you're going to get a crappy answer. You're going to get essentially Katrina-run health care.
Well, Katrina, FEMA was broken by George W. Bush. I mean, this is...
And who's to say that? Well, no, I actually think
this is FEMA is what happens when right wingers like you get in charge of our government, Andrew Langer.
Well, and the VA is what happens when left wingers start applying big government solutions.
So you want to do away with the VA?
No, I'm not saying I want to do away with the VA.
So you want to fund it more?
My wife is a military doctor.
You want more money for the VA?
I would be happy for more money for the VA. But
so you're in charge of increasing government spending, in favor of increasing government spending?
I'm not saying that I am against or in favor of increasing, particular programs of government spending. I think the bottom line is that we need to spend smarter, and I think that...
Okay, and we got to stop there. InstituteForLiberty.org, TaxDayTeaParty.com. The website's Andrew Langer. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.